Let's review Chapter 252 of Jujutsu Kaisen. And once again, we are coming off a 1-week break, and this one felt particularly long to me because having a Yuta cliffhanger, well, there ain't nothing like it. And this chapter kind of gives us the reveal as to whether or not Yuta survived. It's still a little up in the air, but Rika is alive, so it looks pretty good for him. Rika being alive, meaning that Yuta is alive, is an assumption, but I think it's a pretty fair assumption for most people because they are intrinsically linked to each other. That being said, he was dropped off at the corpse collector Ui, so we'll have to wait and see, but for now, let's talk about the rest of the chapter. So this chapter opened up with a very short flashback of Ino and Kusakabe standing outside of Yuta's domain barrier, and we get some more information on their plan with Maki, and they say that Yuta did a great job at relocating his domain. And this part confused a lot of people, and I don't blame them because it's not really mentioned that much in this series, but you can move the coordinates of your domain. This is the same way that Hakari was able to dump Kashimo into water, and how far you can move your domain, they don't really state, but I'm assuming it can't be that far. And the reason they moved Yuta's domain is so they can more easily jump him with all the other characters and sneak attack him with Maki. And the way Yuta was going to signal the rest of them to start their sneak attack was to have him bring down the barrier manually. To the shock of even Sukuna, who thought that his world slash is what brought down Yuta's barrier, but it was actually just Yuta himself. And that is a pretty clutch move, to be honest, and a move that I am more impressed by considering he got chopped in half, or seemingly chopped in half, immediately after or during. It is a little unclear, but then again, everything on this page is unclear because it looks like a napkin drawing. I know we can't expect a Gege Akatame to work at 100% 24/7, and that's fine, but also, this does not look like Yuta to me. And after this, Sukuna gives us some more explanation about the split soul katana and that it was already inside the domain when Maki ran in. And the interesting thing for me is that Sukuna pretty much confirms this chapter he has never run into someone with zero cursed energy prior to Maki. A lot of people assume that, and I assume that as well, especially in chapter 215 when she showed up and he had this face. If you want to get really pedantic, you could say he was only figuring out zero cursed energy in relation to a barrier, so he might have run across someone like this, but since Toji was the only one known in history, I think the implication's pretty clear. But after eating the soul split katana, Sukuna realizes his wounds are not healing as fast as normal. And this is due to the soul split katana's soul-cutting nature while wielded by somebody who understands the soul or can perceive the soul, in this case, Maki. And under normal circumstances, you can't heal this with RCT, but if you understand the shape of your soul, you can heal it, albeit with a bit more difficulty. And Mahito himself mentioned that you can heal your soul with RCT previously as far back as the Junpei fight, or I should say the Junpei death. But after stabbing Sukuna, Maki tries to pull her split soul katana upwards to split him halfway down the middle, but he just dips out. And speaking of dipping out, we cut over to Yuji, who is collapsing to the ground because he is just pushing himself too far. And we actually see Choso show up behind him, and he gives him a pat on the back and says, "Take a breather and remember what you were taught." He tells him to let his blood flow throughout every corner of his body like roots, and this just sounds like flowing red scale to me. And the way they make it sound here is that Yuji has already been using this the entire time, or he is about to use it. Either way, Yuji is going to get back up and slam bam. Because at the end of the day, this is a battle manga, and Yuji is a beater of ass, so he gotta beat some ass. And speaking of beating ass, Maki gives a pretty grand display. This is kind of what I've always wanted to see. She is out here in a straight up 1v1 with Sukuna. Granted, he's weakened, but it doesn't make it any less cool for me. We see Sukuna grab onto the split soul katana, Maki utilizing the momentum to throw him into a building, which he then cleaves and tosses the rubble directly at her. And this is the part that everyone is talking about, that after the rubble is tossed at Maki, we see the chant, "Scale the Dragon, recoil, twin meteors," and we see Maki's eyes go wide as she says, "Fuck that noise," and dodges a world slash. And the first two chants of the world slash were actually hidden in the rubble, and a lot of translations actually miss this part. But after witnessing Maki dodge a world slash, Sukuna compares her ability to see his technique to Mahoraga. And if any character in Jujutsu Kaisen needs to be able to dodge a world slash, it is the person that has no option for RCT. Unless Maki is secretly a lizard or Wolverine, she is not going to regrow a limb if it gets chopped off. She is just done. And really heavily restricted characters like Toji and Maki, they need to be top of the verse in this aspect, because what else do they have? There are no purples to be hollowed. There is simply a sharp object to stab at you with, and in this case, after being stabbed, Sukuna is missing a heart. And to circumvent this, he is using cursed energy like he did in the detention center to keep his body alive, effectively being his own life support and keeping his blood pumping through his body. And Maki is a little surprised by this and says, "Are you really going to keep fighting me like that?" And Sukuna says, "I don't see why not. I'm not even breaking a sweat." But after this this exchange, we cut over to Hakari and Uraume, and I think this is a pretty interesting part where we see that Uraume has frozen pretty much the entire city block. And for the manga of Jujutsu Kaisen, that's a pretty crazy feat because usually the damage doesn't get this widespread. But we see Hakari on top of her ice mound. He says, "I know you're not trying to hide him from me, but Sukuna is pretty easy to tell the presence of." And he's basically gloating to Uraume here, saying that Sukuna's curse energy is taking a nosedive and they are going to win. And Uraume finds this hilarious and grills Hakari, saying that they don't understand Sukuna, explaining to Hakari that if his interest in his opponents is tenuous, so too will be the waves of his cursed energy, and that they should be ashamed to have not presented anyone greater than Satoru Gojo to fight Sukuna. And even if they take the events of the first battle into account, it is clear that Sukuna has yet to go all out. And this comes as a shock to pretty much nobody, because everybody's been waiting for the open box reveal this entire time, the whole fire arrow, and whatever else he has. I'm really curious to see this reveal, because if this reveal needs to be a banger, it is one of the last major power reveals in the series that we're going to get. It has been built up for over 100 chapters. It was brought up by Kusakabe and hinted at during Gojo vs Sukuna. I can't wait to see it. And on the note of other things I can't wait to see, I am very curious as to what the hell Ui is getting up to kidnapping all these bodies. Basically, you have like this little goblin with a blanket out here, and he is just snagging everybody that is about to die or has died. And the curious thing to me this chapter is that we see Kusakabe shout at Ui to grab Yuta's body or his dying body as soon as he can. You could say that Kusakabe's urgency here comes from the fact that Yuta is not actually dead yet, but something interesting that some people have pointed out to me that has come across my mind before is we have never seen the Kogane announce anybody's death yet. And in the case of Gojo and Higuruma, Gojo wasn't a Culling Games player as far as we know, and Higuruma, well, we might have just not seen it. But with Yuta and Yuji saying they cheated, and Sukuna himself starting to wonder if something is going on, and really, who can blame Sukuna for being weirded out by this, because it is extremely strange, and we have no idea what Gojo got up to in that month. So if you are somebody who is on the boat that thinks other characters are going to come back to life, I really can't blame you, because this is really sus. I'm not quite at the point that I'd say all the characters are going to come back yet, but seeing Sukuna about to go Super Saiyan, it is definitely eyebrow raising. And I have a little issue, well, it's not really an issue, more so as a worry that I think the whole we cheated thing might be a little disappointing. Most of the explanations for major plot points in Jujutsu Kaisen are pretty simple, and I don't think a simple explanation for this would feel very satisfying. Most of the potential explanations I've seen, like the prison realm or the sumo wrestling, are okay, but it doesn't really hit for me. Whatever the explanation is, I hope it is really clever, but we'll have to wait and see. Either way, I am looking forward to next chapter. I cannot wait to see the black box, and I really can't wait to see Sukuna enter the avatar state so he can actually lose. But anyways, guys, that is just my opinion. Let me know yours in the comments below, and if you like content like this, subscribe for more. And as always, thanks for watching.